Good afternoon, everybody. It's a Saturday edition of Gold, Goats, and Guns live here sunny North Florida. My name's Tom Luongo. How is everybody this morning? I hope you are all well. Want to talk about North Korea. Want to talk about the potential for real change at in the geopolitical landscape. I was talking about this last night on Periscope, and I wanted to do a YouTube live this morning covering the same thing to catch a slightly different audience. So the big news from yesterday was that the North Koreans have come off their mountain and had a successful summit with South Korea over the potential for a reunification, for lack of a better term. And that's excellent. It's actually what I expected to see happen over the course of time. And I've got a blog post up over at my blog over at goldgoatsandguns.com. That's Gold Goats and Guns with an N, not an and you can follow it. You can follow the logic there. I'm going to lay out a lot of the text of that article here. Again, this is something I went over again last night on Periscope. You can follow me over on Periscope at Tom Luongo as well. And you can follow me on Twitter at TFL1728. And we can go from there. So the important thing to take away here, and it's really funny how so many analysts on this don't get the subject right, do not understand what's actually happening here. They let their own bias push their analysis into really strange corners, to be honest. I was reading an email got sent to me this morning from a friend of mine, from Doug Cass, who's an investment advisor and a man who I have a tremendous amount of respect for. I get his missive sent to me from a friend of mine on a daily basis, and he puts out short investment notes every day. And he's very much a trader and very much conservative, kind of almost a classic conservative. But he was saying this morning in his note that this whole North Korean thing is nothing but a big nothing burger, because now Kim Jong-Un gets to look like he's potent and that he matters, and he finally got the United States' attention, and Trump is willing to engage in this way because Trump is only interested in his ratings, right? He's only interested in his appearance. Neither of these things are even close to true. While Trump absolutely is a narcissist and absolutely does love his image of himself, that is not his animating reason for being president. It's not his animating reason for conducting foreign policy. That's just nonsense. That's bad analysis. And if Doug is short the S&P 500 because of this, well, take it with a grain of salt. He'll still trade the technicals and tell you what he'll tell you whatever his fundamentals are on a daily basis. It's part of the problem with this industry, and being a part of this industry, I can tell you that it's like this, that in financial analysis, at the end of the day, the numbers rule. Martin Armstrong is absolutely right about this. At the end of the day, all that really matters is the technicals and the numbers and what the market did and how far it moved and all of that. And quantitative analysis is really the only way to truly do any kind of sincere trading. Right? There's no, most of the fundamental stuff that we talk about is nothing but that. It's just talk. It's just a reason to write something in order for people to get a sense of who you are and whether or not they should listen to you. And it's really, to be honest with you, it's really just marketing. And it's, at the end of the day, mostly bullshit too. So every day, Doug Cass, people like me and Doug Cass and other people have to write something every day in order to remind people that, we exist and we have opinions, and those opinions may or may not be valid. But you'll notice rarely do I ever make kind of fundamental arguments. I do in our investment newsletter, because when you're talking about buying a stock and holding it for 5 or 10 years, which is part of the strategy behind Gold, Goats, and Guns as an investment thesis, then you absolutely want to talk about the fundamentals of a particular stock. Are they making any money? Are they in a good business? Do they have a unique selling proposition? Who are their competitors? Those kinds of things. So when you write for sites like Seeking Alpha and others, you Motley Fool and others, you realize very quickly that it's all just a big game. right? How can you grab eyeballs in such a way that you can then use those eyeballs to make a little bit of money and build a business and build a clientele? As long as you're upfront with this, as long as the clientele, the potential clientele understands this, you go from there. At the end, then it's all cool. But remember, at the end of the day, I really just watch technicals, by the way. And I'm really not interested in anything else. So listening to traders like Doug Cass try and give out political analysis like this is really actually kind of cute, because while I'm like 85% political analyst and 15% market analyst, Doug Cass is 85% market analyst and 15% political analyst. Well, you really shouldn't listen to him on politics. Maybe you shouldn't listen to me about markets. I don't know. So that's the way that plays out. So let's get back to North Korea, and because one of the things I didn't bring up last night in my Periscope, I laid out the entire plan as to why I think this is the beginning of a path to actually complete peace in all of the major hotspots in the world currently, and all of which, by the way, Donald Trump is poking. Right? He's poking Iran, he's poking North Korea, he's even allowing the neocons to poke over in Ukraine. At a certain level, he's poking the Russians. Why is he doing this? Well, because it's actually a very similar strategy to what he's doing domestically to his domestic enemies, i.e. the CIA, the NSA, the mainstream media, the Democrats, the Uniparty, the rhinos, the Democrats, and everybody else. The swamp, for lack of a better term. What he's doing over here is he's attacking them from multiple fronts all at the same time. He's creating literally narrative chaos, right? So that on a day when we have the potential for North and South Korean unification, at the beginnings of which we have on MSNBC them talking about Stormy Daniels. We even go so far as to have Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski, two people who absolutely despise Donald Trump, go so far as to say that Trump is only entertaining talking to Kim Jong-Un because he's trying to deflect away from this Stormy Daniels controversy, that they're the only ones who seem to be interested in, right? And I saw a tweet from Dennis Miller yesterday. Twitter actually sent me something that was actually interesting. A tweet from Miller yesterday saying, we're looking at North Korean peace, and the Democrats are talking about Stormy Daniels. Trump is winning so hard they don't even realize it. Something to that effect. And he was absolutely right. So welcome to everybody who's shown up. If you've got any questions, obviously throw some stuff up in the chat. I'll be happy to respond to them and yada, yada, yada. So, or at least just, pop in and say hello and say, this is, who's here, yada, yada. That'd be great. All right. So so in a quick layout, North Korean denuclearization is actually code for signing a final peace treaty to end the Korean War, which never ended, right? Even, again, most mainstream media pundits and articles written about this all get it wrong. All that was ever signed was a ceasefire between American generals and the Chinese and South Koreans. That's it. All that was ever signed. There is no peace treaty. The UN still hasn't signed a peace treaty. The U.S. hasn't, no one has actually signed a peace treaty. So in order to denuclearize the peninsula, or in order to end the North Koreans' drive towards a nuclear weapon, we're going to have to sign a peace treaty, which means removing U.S. troops from the DMZ, which means demining it, moving away the howitzers, and all of that stuff that's there, all the militarization, and turning the border between North and South Korea into a kind of normal political border. Now, whether that leads to actual reunification into one country or anything like that, well, that's all up in the air. There's 18 or 19 different ways that could go, and it really isn't really germane to the discussion right now, or even a year or 2 years from now. What matters is that process would have to begin, and that's the only reason and the only way the North Koreans will even entertain giving up the nuclear weapons. The threat of regime change in Pyongyang has to end. They have to not be under existential threat of being wiped out by the United States. Period. And we've reserved the right to do so since the end of the Korean War. I think it'll have to go farther than that. I think to even get anybody's attention whatsoever, Trump is going to have to give up even more than that. He'll probably have to move all American assets back to the southernmost tip of the Korean Peninsula. He might even have to dial back on our presence in the South China Sea, i.e. the Seventh Fleet, in order to placate China. Because again, at the end of the day, if China doesn't agree with any of this, none of it's going to happen, right? Because, don't forget, China does have tremendous influence over what's going on in North Korea. So we have that. Now, the minute the North Koreans give up their nuclear weapons or give up their nuclear weapons program, that effectively puts a halt on Iran's drive for a nuclear weapon. Because, as I lay out in the article, and I feel very strongly about it, I've talked multiple times with Halsey and Halsey English on his channel and a variety of other places. By the way, if you don't follow Halsey English, you should. So you can find a link to it in my YouTube channel. I'm subscribed to him. You should subscribe to him as well. I do a weekly show with him as well. We've discussed many times that, the North Koreans are working on the nuclear warhead. Iran is working on the ballistic missiles. And they're outsourcing the other side of it together. And they're each working on half of a nuclear ballistic missile. Nuclear warhead in North Korea, ballistic missile over in Iran, put them together, get a nuclear ballistic missile. Not tough. 1 + 1 = 2, right? A + B = C. So and this is the reason why Trump is so angry about the Iran nuclear deal, because he understands that it does nothing to stop Iran's ability to get a nuclear weapon while allowing them to continue their ballistic missile development. And then Obama gave them back all their money that effectively we stole from them in the first place when we put sanctions on them back in 2012 and froze all their assets, and hundreds of billions of dollars of Iranian assets are sitting in American banks. It's their money, okay? And you can argue about how they earned it, and you can argue about everything else, but at the end of the day, you never right to steal it from them either. So everybody's got a point. When you stop everybody's got a grievance and everybody's got a point, and that's all you got. That's the way it is. So once you have that in place, if that process ends, if Iran is removed, if Iran no longer has a drive for a nuclear weapon, then that de-stresses Israel. Because both Iran and Israel are operating under the idea that they're both under existential threat. Iran from the United States, who wants regime change, and backed by Israel, and Israel, who thinks Iran wants to wipe them off the face of the planet. Not saying that either of them are wrong, right? Not saying either of them are right, not saying either of them are wrong. This is the way they feel. Now, remove the existential threat from one side, you can now start removing the existential threat from the other side. See, because what Trump wants is a Middle East peace plan. Putin wants that as well. This is why Russian President Vladimir Putin is running around, along with Sergei Lavrov, his foreign minister, and cutting deals with everybody. Cutting deals with Qatar, Israel, Saudi Arabia. Everybody gets S-400s. Everybody gets fourth-generation fighters. Some, like India, get to co-develop a fifth-generation fighter who gets a pipeline deal, who gets a this deal, who gets a that deal. Putin's out there doing the Dale Carnegie thing, making friends and influencing people. He's doing a great job of it. He's creating economic incentives for everybody to shut up, calm down, and get down to business. But all that has to happen for this to occur is for him to guarantee Iran will keep its dick in its pants, and for the U.S. to say the same thing, to do the same thing with the Israelis and the Saudis. And that means that the neoconservatives who are currently in charge of foreign policy have to lose everywhere. They have to lose in Ukraine. They have to lose in Syria. They have to lose in North Korea. Because they're the ones driving this bus, not Trump. Mattis is driving this bus in Syria. Mattis is driving some of this in North Korea. Okay? These are maximum pressure tactics in order to get people to negotiate. Once people feel that we have crossed a particular event horizon, it's at that point that people are willing to negotiate. Up until that point, no one's willing to negotiate. This is why Trump announced the move of our embassy to Jerusalem. This is a way of saying to the Israelis, no, really, the U.S. has your back. No, really, and to the Palestinians, no, really, this is now off the table. At a minimum, there will be a two-state solution. At a minimum, there will no longer be the possibility of you continuing to wheedle and whine and not actually be agreement capable and all that shit in order to try and wheedle the Israelis completely out of Jerusalem, which was always the plan it's always the plan, right? That I mean, let's not kid ourselves. That's what's going on. So that's where things are. So now, all of this sounds great, right? If you know, the dominoes all fall in a particular order, all of this sounds great. But the thing I didn't really talk about last night on the Periscope feed, and it's the most important part of the article I've got that I'm kind of riffing off of, is that in order to do this, Trump has to defeat the neoconservatives. He has to defeat them in every fundamental way. He has to defeat them politically here at home. They still control the airwaves. They still control the think tanks. They still control most of the conservative press, right? Their thinking still dominates the political landscape. The average person, like Doug Cass, thinks the cartoon of Kim Jong-Un and Iran is reality. And Putin, these things are reality. When the animating feature, the animating drive of the neoconservatives is the destruction of Russia. Nothing more, nothing less. All this stuff about China and Iran and all that, none of that stuff matters. You destroy Russia, effectively now you can take over the world. This is why Gary Cohn left the White House. Goldman Sachs was no longer going to have influence within the White House because Trump basically told him so, that I'm cutting off Goldman. Lloyd Blankfein is stepping down. Now there's going to be a changing of the guard at Goldman. There's probably going to be a sea change in the culture over at Goldman because they went for their big takeover of and their complete regulatory capture of the United States government and the legal framework under which they operate at the expense of all of their competitors, J.P. Morgan, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, HSBC, and the rest. And it looks like they're going to lose because Trump basically told them to go, no, you don't get to run the world in your little globalist paradise. No. I am actually for America first, even though me personally don't always agree with the way Trump goes about it. But understand that that Trump is doing what he thinks is in the best interest of the United States, period. And by him doing that and pissing off Goldman, you know, I'll take some temporary tariffs on steel, softwoods, and aluminum. I mean, seriously, I'll make that trade for a couple of years because if that blunts Goldman's ambitions to turn all of us into debt slaves to do their bidding, well, then, you know, I'm okay with that. I'll take that trade. You know, whatever. It's okay. We'll figure it out. We can always, that's a policy that can always be reversed. Things like TTIP and TPP and the Paris Accords, once they're law, and NAFTA. You see how hard it is for Trump to get a renegotiation of NAFTA. He's been talking about it for two years now, and he's now just beginning the pressure tactic to get Mexico and Canada to the table on it. So, no. All right. So, the hard part here is how does Trump defeat the neocons, right? That's the big one. How does he do it? Well, denuclearizing North Korea is a big win, right? It's going to be a big win here at home. Does it this year? Somehow a series of summits starting in May and working through the summer. That's a big win. That's going to be hard for it's going to be hard for the Mitt Romney, John McCain, the Lindsey Graham wing of the Republican Party, Paul Ryan, for them to argue with him on. He's going to pull the center of this country so far away from the Democrats, who will still be screaming about gun control and Russian hacking of their servers, and that, you know, Trump is a bore. This is what they're going to run on? Are you kidding? Talk about somebody who's under existential threat. This is where we are. This is reality. The Democrats are you know, barring massive systemic vote fraud, are looking at are looking at a complete wipeout. I just got a question from Sherry Beck. Do you believe, and do you give any credibility to Q's posts claiming that Trump already met with Kim Jong-Un in the Forbidden City in November? That's actually the first I've heard of it, because I don't really read the QAnon stuff, because I'm not sure I buy any of this stuff. I don't discount the possibility. I certainly don't discount the possibility that Trump and Xi Jinping had an extensive discussion about their strategy of how they were going to extricate themselves from this situation. Because remember, the biggest win of the Trump administration so far is not tax cuts. Okay, it's not. The tax cuts are huge. That's how big this actual victory is. His big victory is having created a strong personal relationship with both Xi Jinping in China and Vladimir Putin in Russia. Both of them respect Trump. They're not necessarily happy with him at a policy level at this point, but they respect him and know that if they go to sit down and negotiate with them, they will have an honest actor on the other side. And this is the big talking point. Is the U.S. now agreement capable? Because for the past 10 years or so, we have not been, in any functional way, agreement capable. We do not honor the agreements that we make internationally. We force people, we get people to negotiate, we sign an agreement, and then we violate it almost immediately. I mean, even the Iran nuclear deal. Iran was supposed to get sanctions relief. Iran was supposed to be able to get access to the Western banking system. Was supposed to get their money back. A year after it was signed, they still hadn't seen a dollar. Now, I'm sorry, if I'm Iran at that point, after all of this shit, I'd grab 4 of our sailors and say, want my money back. Let's go. You signed an agreement. We're letting the inspectors in. We're doing our job. We're doing our part. You're not doing yours. The Russians feel very, very strongly about this. Multiple times did John Kerry and the Obama administration organize ceasefires in Ukraine, in Syria, to only have them violated within 24 hours. And the Donbass is multiple occasions of there being ceasefires and then negotiated. The DPR and LPR forces move off the contact line, and the Ukrainian army starts shelling them immediately and trying to take over positions. I don't believe, if I were Putin, I wouldn't believe a word that comes out of anybody's mouth from America, period. And he doesn't, except Trump. Afternoon, James. How are you? So, it's a very important point that to beat the neocons means beating them at a fundamental level where their mendacity, where their control over intelligence agencies, media, and lower echelons of the Defense Department and military contractors and all this stuff, that's what's got to be beaten. Because Trump can make an agreement, right? Trump can say, "Look, I want peace here. I want to work this out. This is the plan." And they're gonna be like, well, "How are you gonna pull that off?" The minute you try and do so, they're going to bomb our people. They're going to do this. They're going to set up a false flag here. They're going to do some other damn thing there. I mean, if they're actually discussing things, like rational people, if they're actually discussing the reality of things and not talking in diplo speak, right? They're actually talking frankly with one another. That's the conversation that has been had between Trump and Jinping and Putin multiple times. That all sounds good. I'm okay with it. But I don't trust your people around you. So get rid of Gary Cohn. Okay? That kind of thing. This is what has to happen. Because Trump's Secretary of Defense is an old school Cold Warrior. Doesn't like Iran. Mattis has a real fundamental problem with Iran. This is it's in his bones, man. Right? The neoconservatives, a lot of them are Jewish, and they have a fundamental hatred of Russia that goes back to Stalin. Okay, that goes back, 2 generations now, and they can't get over it. Guys like Bill Kristol and Jennifer Rubin and the Wolfowitz and the rest of them, it's just the way they are. They just think Russians are sneaky, dirty people. It's obvious from the way they act. And then we got Lindsey Graham out there having his Madeleine Albright moment saying, well, if we have to have a war over in North Korea to stop their nuclear weapons, it'll be worth it, even if it kills millions of Japanese and Koreans. Yeah. And they say Kim Jong-Un is crazy. I mean, seriously. The only good thing here is that John McCain is finally going to step down. So he's no longer in charge of, armed forces and intelligence. He's got 2 or 3 committees that he's the Foreign Relations Committee and everything else. He controls all that stuff. Yeah, half bright, exactly. Unbelievable. Lindsey Graham needs to be removed from the Senate. On that statement alone, he needs to be removed by South Carolina voters. But he can say that because he's 4 years away from re-election, or 3 years away from re-election. So he can say whatever he wants. He can do whatever he wants because he's immune because we can't recall senators in this country, which is a real damn shame if you ask me. So, I don't know. That's most of what I wanted to talk about today. The coming up on the, what are we coming up on? 27 minutes. I got about 5 or 6 more minutes to discuss things. I usually like to go about just over a half an hour. The last thing I wanted to talk about. There was something else I did want to talk about this morning, and now I can't think of it. Wait, that's not good. Oh, hey, how about this? Does Lindsey know how to take the lead neoconservative? No, he doesn't. He wants it, but he doesn't have the leadership capability. He doesn't have the leadership ability. Lindsey Graham does not have leadership ability to get anybody to wrangle the troops. No, in no way. He's run, but he's not as powerful as John McCain because he doesn't sit as chairman of multiple Senate committees. Right. So it really comes down to that at an administrative level. That's the issue. So, yeah, I think that's about it. I think it's cotton. Yeah. So we'll see what happens going forward, right? We'll see how this plays itself out. But I'm firmly convinced now that we're on the right path, and now to what we should be watching for is what we should be watching for is how this develops. We're going to be looking to see what happens post Russian elections, right? Because there's been a lot of minor provocations with Russia in order to try and undermine Putin during his re-election cycle. It's not working. Putin's going to win in a walk. United Russia will probably wind up with a majority. Or he already has a Duma majority that's large enough for them to start making constitutional changes. I want you to watch for that as well. And then the other thing to think about is that in the context of the European Union's deteriorating political situation, that rates are starting to rise. More importantly, LIBOR is starting to rise very, 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 very quickly. The LIBOR OIS spread is also starting to rise quickly. That's a signal of dollar illiquidity. And when the dollar goes illiquid, then it's going to get really interesting because that's the point at which any strength in the euro starts to really truly seize up. And if the euro starts to weaken because demand for dollars is really tight, then that's going to push rates upward in Europe, meaning they're going to be selling euros, they're going to be buying dollars, they're going to be capital is going to be flying out of Europe, and rates are going to start rising, and that's going to put upward pressure on Italian bond yields. And at that point, things are going to start to get ugly. That'll probably take another couple of months to start playing itself out. But I want you to be aware of the fact that everything looks calm on the surface in financial markets right now, but it's really not. There's a seething cauldron of credit spreads blowing out and all sorts of stuff. So this is going to be a slow burn, but it's absolutely coming. And the central banks are just trying to sit on it as best they can. All right. That's what I've got for this morning. So you guys have a great weekend. Have a great afternoon. Tomorrow night I will be doing a podcast with the Information War guys from Steemit. There's the Information War channel on Steemit is something that I post to all the time. It's a great channel. Got a lot of great writers over there. I got a link to that down below in the blog, in the description. Also, if you wouldn't mind, give a if you're watching this, subscribe to the channel so you can get the announcements as to when I go live, because I kind of do these on an ad hoc basis. Monday nights at 8 p.m. and Friday nights at 9 p.m. I do about an hour and 15 minutes over on Periscope as well, so you can check out my stuff there. Those are a little bit more informal, I guess. I'm not really sure if you would call this formal or not. So good afternoon. There we are. You guys have a great afternoon. Have a great weekend. Talk soon. Keep your stick on the ice.